Welcome to another psychology class. Remember, we are doing introduction to psychology. It's an introduction. It doesn't mean it's not psychology, but it means you're dealing with the basics. In other words, you have to have this before you can have that. You have to have the introduction before you can move on. All right, you can't move on without the introduction. You have to have the basics. Okay, let us pause a prayer. Father, thank you for today. Thank you, Lord, for this opportunity you have afforded us to do this class. Thank you for the participants. Ask your blessings upon them. In the precious name I pray, amen. Okay, we'll be looking now at methods psychologists use. In every science, the methods of study depend on the subject matter. In every science, the method of study. Because the behavior of living organisms takes such a wide variety of forms, and in part because of ethical considerations discussed later in the chapter, psychologists use diverse approaches to research. No single method can suffice because different methods are required to answer different kinds of research questions. Psychologists have therefore adopted an array of ways of studying their subject matter, and they are constantly seeking new ways. They have also developed or adopted increasingly sophisticated instrumentation suited to their research. Here we focus on the rationale and techniques of the most prominent methods of psychological research. With some notes on instrumentation, further examples of the instrumentation that often augment psychological research appear at various points throughout the text. We are being disturbed, but let us ignore it. It will soon die down. Someone is disturbing us. There's a call somewhere. So now, I read this part again. Here we focus on the rationale and techniques of the most prominent methods of psychological research, with some notes on instrumentation. Further examples of the instrumentation that often augments or supports psychological research appear at various points throughout the text. So we're going to be looking at observation. Again, you notice sociology employs this method as well. Observation. In many cases, psychologists do what astronauts or astronomers, naturalists, and certain other scientists do. They observe and record events as they occur without intervention. For example, a psychological researcher might observe the behavior of people in various kinds of social situations. All of us casually observe the behavior of other people and draw some conclusions from their actions. If we note that a student rarely speaks up in class and has difficulty conversing in social situations in general, you might conclude that this person is shy and you might interact with him or her accordingly if you interact with him or her at all. You might not, as well as you might. Hallelujah. Depending on who you are, if you're trained and you're a people person and you're interested in people, you interact and so on. In a sense, psychologists are no different from everybody else, except for a preoccupation with accuracy. Psychologists make their observations and draw their conclusions in a disciplined fashion. They try to describe behavior objectively and exactly, and they don't jump to conclusions about the motives behind it. As a simple example, take a psychologist studying the reactions of students to the stress of an exam. As an example, take a psychologist studying the reactions of students to the stress of an exam. Rather than merely recording that the students were anxious. The psychologist might record that the students regularly shifted position, grimaced, and frowned, and tapped or chewed on the pencils. So, because the person is trained, it will be looking. It'll see more than what you see. You'll see few of them, but you're not going to see as many. And you might not even. To some people, it might be that the child is not prepared. They might draw that conclusion. So you see, in a sense, we are psychologists. Only that people don't have the training. To some, it might be that the child is rude. When you say get a certain reaction and behavior from a child, when it's not necessarily so, the child might be hurting within. The child might be going through a rough passage, things like that. I remember when I was doing my master's at the University of the West Indies, I completed an exam. And because I had been under such a stress, something told me that something wasn't right. I got, it is difficult to rationalize. I don't even know, but I contacted the professor. And I was saying this, and I can't remember what it was I was saying. But I know I was stressed, and I was saying this, that, this, that. And she, being an experienced person, no doubt, I believe she picked up that I was stressed. An experienced lecturer at that level. And she responded with one word. Her response was one word: relax. Lord of mercy. Because, she could afford to say, because it can be dangerous, to say certain things and so on that they can be used against her. She gave a reply was one word: relax. So when you have the training or experience to assess people, it does help. And as a pastor or active church worker, you'll be out there in the field dealing with people, youngsters, and this one, that a child that you might see behaving in a rude way in your youth meeting or your Sunday school class or in the church as a whole, it would be good to take the child one side, at a point, and then maybe you can invite him to your home or invite him somewhere that he will come and you can relax and have some, and get into the child's background to find out what is what. And I remember being invited to the school to address some students, a class of students. I can't remember what I did, but I went and I talked. But while I was talking, there was a particular boy there. I don't know if that's how he behaved generally. I don't want to draw a conclusion, but he was behaving that way at the time. And the teacher was there, but he had a yo-yo, and he was playing the yo-yo. And I would say to him at intervals, put away the yo-yo, and then he would hold on to it. At a point, it would start again. But then I stopped telling him to put it aside. Because whenever time I asked a question, he was able to answer. So I realized that while he was doing that, even though I was doing that, but it was not right, it was not class for him to write. I was just talking, I was called to address the students. I was invited to do that. He was listening and learning. There's a lot of this thing. He was very much listening and learning. And the others who were paying attention were not answering. He was leading. He was the most outstanding person in terms of answering questions, despite his. So and then so I stopped. I stopped telling him to put it away. My son, I observed this. His observation we're talking about. I observed this with one of my sons. I reared 3 children. The second child, while he was doing his first degree, I'm not sure if he did it while he was in high school, but he was more open with it. If he did it during high school time, it wasn't open. He was more open with it when he was in the university. He was playing music, not loudly. Music was there being played, and I was doing his work, and I remember talking to him about it, and he said that music helped him. So I said to him, okay, I will watch to see how you perform. If you perform okay, I won't trouble you. And he was performing. He came home and we had a desktop at the time at the house. And he did his work. He never had to repeat a course. I didn't have to pay for him to repeat a course. So I take it that he never failed any because you'll have to pay to repeat. I never had to pay for him to repeat a course. And he did his program within the prescribed period, except in the last year he had to do some sub courses and so on. So you talk about observation. You observe people and you draw conclusions. You assess and you draw conclusions. And you know how to deal with the situation as a result of your assessment and conclusions. Don't just assume or take it, and don't apply the same thing to everybody, the same standards. Don't apply it to everybody. Everybody is different. Everybody is different. In a sense, psychologists are no different from everybody else except for a preoccupation with accuracy. Psychologists make their observations and draw their conclusions in a disciplined and, I would say, scientific fashion. They try to describe the behavior objectively and exactly, and they don't jump to conclusions about the motives behind it. You can jump. You draw a conclusion and you realize that something is either wrong or something is strange or something is different. Something is not um, in keeping with the norms, and therefore you draw that conclusion. You're going to deal with the person one way. As a simple example, take psychologists studying the reactions of students to the stress. I mentioned that already. Rather than merely recording that the students were anxious, the psychologist might record that the students regularly shifted. In studying behavior through observation, psychologists try to remain apart from what is going on and thereby avoid influencing the behavior of these objects of their study in any way. In everyday settings, they practice naturalistic observation, trying to be as inconspicuous as possible, lest their presence affect the behavior they are studying. In laboratory settings, sometimes psychologists arrange to remain unseen behind one-way glass. Some of our most valuable knowledge about the behavior and development of children has come from observers who use this method. Classic and still relevant findings regarding the sexual responses of adults who volunteered to be observed were obtained in part in this manner. Naturalistic observation has also been used extensively in studying the behavior of species other than humans, for example, the social behavior of primates. At times, psychologists also engage in participant observation. They take an active part in a social situation, perhaps deliberately role-playing to see how other people behave, say toward someone who seems unusually withdrawn or hostile. Participant observation has been used in a variety of settings, including schools, mental situations. In a larger sense, accurate observation is a mainstay of psychological research and practice. We're going to have to leave that point and go to another um, subtopic: interviews and case histories. I don't use history in that way, but I allow it. Another way to gain insight into what people think and feel is to ask questions. Psychologists, especially clinicians, often use interviews in which they question clients or research participants in depth about their experiences and their ideas and feelings about those experiences. In turn, interviews are an integral part of case histories, in which significant experiences in a person's life are reconstructed and compiled in an attempt to show how various behavior patterns develop. I realize that, sometimes you do some things naturally. One of the natural things I do is to ask questions, ask people questions on certain things, behaviors and so on. I ask questions. And people might think, people who do not understand will consider you nosy. And people say you're fast and you want to know people's business. But it is not something simple, right? It is one of the approaches of psychologists, one of the approaches they take. Case histories may also include other information such as family, demographics, and public records. Usually, the first step in clinical diagnosis is to construct a case history, and thus, this is the most common application of the case history. However, case histories are also useful in gaining insight into the origin of relatively rare mental and behavioral disorders or conditions that cannot, because of their rarity, be studied in other ways. So, interviews and case histories. So, and doctors normally have a case history for you, and your card, your docket, and so on. They write down, and at a point they can look at it and draw a conclusion. They keep going to the same doctor, and each visit, he records certain things. He has certain information. One has to be careful too, because a doctor can know. I have seen cases like that where people have died because the patient, has his doctor and he keeps going to his doctor. The doctor knows that he suffers from hypertension and he suffers from diabetes and so on. So every time he goes or he went for a checkup or went to see the doctor drew the conclusion. Um, Drew the conclusion that it was diabetes, and maybe it checked it and realized it was out, but it didn't check for anything else. And on this occasion, and there are numerous occasions where this person died, and he died almost in the hands. When the autopsy was done, he died of something totally different. And he had a medication there, He had gone to the doctor, got his medication, and so on. I was on the medication. I think he died. He went to the doctor that day, and he died the night. The doctor treated him, kept treating him for the usual. That is why I do what is called an executive profile annually. So the doctor is going to check for a number of things. You get a thorough checkup, and he checks. Have you go to the lab and do a blood test for a number of different things. Because you just do not know. You don't. If you keep going just for your diabetes or just for your hypertension, it's going to just. But when you do an executive profile, it will show up something else. If something else is here, and maybe show it up in time where it can be remedied. So, another method that they use, questionnaires and surveys. Closely related to the interview is a questionnaire, another way of gaining information simply by asking. A major difference between a questionnaire and an interview is that a questionnaire is a set of standardized written questions which often are answered by filling in circles or an optical scan sheet for computer scoring and analysis. Also, unlike interviews, which can include open-ended questions, that allow the interviewer to pursue topics of interest at length as they arise. Questionnaires are usually highly structured and contain a specific list of questions that each participant answers in the same order. Although they are not as personal or flexible as interviews, questionnaires have a major advantage in that information can be gathered and processed quickly. The scoring is also more objective in that it is obvious what a person's answers are, although determining what those answers actually mean can require considerable interpretation, of course. The thing is, I prefer the interviews. Well, I've had to do questionnaires too, and I'm not ruling it out. But the professor here seems to be pushing the questionnaire and surveys above interviews. But I enjoy interviewing people. And I have saved many cases, you know. I remember I've had the experience of going to marry a couple. And by talking with them, I discovered certain things that caused me not to do it. They had everything there, ring everything. My brethren of my church had gone into the community and met them and made those discoveries. So they told me, and I went, armed and ready. But I was led to ask certain questions first. And one thing led to another. I was the female at a point. The male said everything was fine. The female was there, listening, said nothing. So because you see, the thing with interviews and with the questionnaires or surveys, people have to talk the truth. It is different in natural science in the sense that the doctor tests you or the blood at the lab, and then they make the finds. With the social science, you have to question people, whether written or oral. If they don't tell you the truth, they'll throw you off. So at a point, a woman chipped in at the end of it, and then she started to discuss certain things. And she said, she told me of the number of times the male partner made serious attempts to commit suicide. Even the Thursday, I was there the Thursday prior to the Saturday of the same week. And he tried to hang himself. And she said the reason why it didn't die. The thing in the roof that they put the rope on was not strong. So when he went on a chair and whatever and jumped off, it was choked for a while because she said a lot of things were on the floor, and so on, mucus and saliva and so on. But at a point while he was there choking, the thing broke. And apparently she heard the sound. She came in and she rescued him, pulled the thing from his throat. And which was abnormal. And she said it wasn't the first he attempted to kill himself. Then I realized I had to start my questioning again. He had not told me the truth. What a thing it was. This young man, he and the young lady had been living for 13 years. And he had committed murder. He had murdered somebody 10 years prior to my coming to him. Murdered someone and nobody found out. Nobody knew. And that had been haunting him. So there's a place for interviews. Strong place. I referred him now to more competent authorities. And he went. I don't know if he kept going, but I know he went. I didn't bother to marry them. Because she said he was abusive. I don't know if it was abuse to the point where he was beating her up. But he was abusive, he was rough, he didn't make love to her like a real man. He would just grab her and so on and harass her and threw her here and threw her there and yeah, and so on. There was something about him that was terrible. He had committed murder and had that carrying for many, many years. Had that carrying. So there's something behind it, and there's a place of psychology. A popular application of questionnaires is the survey, and this is statistical, in which a questionnaire is administered to a large number of people in a short period of time. Questionnaires find a special use in the study of public opinion. Yes, scientific methods for choosing a representative sample of people to poll and then analyzing the results have made it possible to infer with a very small margin of error how all people across an entire nation stand on a controversial issue by questioning a mere 1,500 people. Surveys are therefore a valuable contribution to the democratic process. They shed light on what citizens think about such issues as taxation, defense expenditures, foreign policy, abortion, and laws regulating sexual conduct and drug use. Before such information was available, there was no accurate way to gauge public opinion. And this now is political science here. You know, it talks about issues in a country and opinion, and this is political science. So it goes to show how interlocking these sciences are, and they support one another. They mesh one another with one another. Questionnaires are also routinely used in many other areas of life, as well as in smaller scale psychological research. They often take the form of rating scales in which participants express opinions, beliefs, feelings, or concerns. For example, toward the end of the term, you will probably complete an evaluation of this course using ratings, perhaps numbers between 1 and 5, to assess the quality of various aspects of the course, including the choice of textbook. To produce accurate results, a questionnaire must be worded with extreme care. Creating a reliable questionnaire is a fine art. Reliable. So even that requires expertise. Because the slightest change in the way questions are worded may completely distort the results. Questionnaire data are sometimes challenged on the ground that people do not respond accurately. Yeah. Here's another you can I have known of cases where these polls work in a general way. A poll can miss, especially if the political front is fluid and the parties are really, really, really campaigning with ads and and so on, confusing people. So you find that people shift, time to time, regularly for the day, within the week, and so on. But generally, they work accurately. It doesn't make sense to start a new topic because the time is gone. Time is gone. So when we come back, we look at standardized psychological tests and physiological measures. Time is run out on us. Time is gone. But I know you're being enlightened to a number of things. I know your horizon is being broadened and your eyes are opening up, and you're going to better understand your reading books when you take up some books and read, because a book written, and even a novel written by someone who has training in psychology is going to reflect that knowledge. And you're going to see terms and expressions and phrases and clauses that are not common. But the fact that you have a background in this will enable you to handle such books and understand them. Do your reflection and email me. God bless you.